just gonna stop the music because we're gonna hop into test range and we're gonna talk about this. But all I'm gonna say, random recoil, root cause an issue of the whole franchise. And it's ruining the experience for casuals. It ruins the experience for good players. And it confuses them. It confuses people. It literally does. All right. Again, the topic is really random recoil in Battlefield 5 and why this is hurting the franchise for casual players and pro players, and why I believe this is causing hacking. This is why it causes maps to be imbalanced. This is why it causes lack of gun variety. This is what causes players to be confused on what the meta should and should not be. All right, so I'm gonna pull out a gun. Actually, you know, this is a great example. We're gonna pull out the first gun in the game. We'll put a 2x scope on it, and we're gonna shoot. The recoil of the gun says that it's supposed to kick, obviously up. There's a lot of intervals here. It kicks left and then it kicks right, right? We assume that this pattern is consistent. Now, up close, this may not seem that big of a deal. But whenever you're at range, and this is fine for recoil in Rainbow Six Siege, keep in mind that this is okay for this engagement, right? But once you add in, this is a very close range engagement. And the recoil pattern's a little different in variations every single time. Sometimes it'll kick a little bit too much to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right. It's always a little bit different, which is fine. And Rainbow Six Siege prides itself on being a game based on close range encounter. So if you're in this close range encounter, you can handle the recoil, and sometimes it'll deviate up and down. You'll have some sort of variance and some sort of issues with the recoil, but this is the engagement range. Now, if you're looking at a large map like Hamada, right, where the engagement range is beyond 30 or 50 meters, or sometimes 75, granted, you would say, okay, we need to use a different gun for this engagement, right? But the problem when you're using that gun for that engagement is that you look at the list of weapons and you find yourself that everything else is pretty much a sniper or DMR, and it negates the whole purpose of using an AR whenever it has too much of random recoil for you to handle. Because if the recoil is random and at range, it becomes harder to control recoil in a video game at range. And new players and casual players cannot figure it out. A casual player would have to put in, you know, nearly 1,000 hours. A pro player maybe like 200 or 300 hours in a video game to be able to figure out the recoil of a gun. Then obviously I'm a sniper. That's what I do. But this past year, I've decided to aim train and practice and actually try to take my gameplay to a new level. I went into Kovacs, I went into Apex, I went into CSGO, and I started actually practicing and handling recoil. And I kind of said, you know what? I think I'm gonna finally bring this to Battlefield 5 and do something a little different with it. When it came to Battlefield 5, it's random. It's not consistent. There's no consistency. When you look at the recoil on Apex Legends, there's a consistency to the recoil. It always kicks left, it always goes right, and then it goes left-right. And then the R301 has a consistent pattern. If you record it, it's always the same. The same thing with CSGO. At the end, it becomes a little bit more bloom. There's more of a bloom effect, but it's CSGO. It's also close range. You're not meant to fight at that long-range encounter. That's why they have the op. That's why they balance the game the way it's supposed to be balanced. That makes sense. So you tap fire the first shots and you can pretty much single shot it. It goes boom, 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 and then it starts to get a little crazy. But even then, it's predictable in how it sways left and right, and it can be a real pain to handle, but that's the whole purpose of it. If you can't kill somebody in the first few shots, regardless in CSGO, you're pretty much dead. And you should be dead because nobody should be able to handle that recoil, and nobody should last that long in a gunfight and an encounter. The only reason you would do it, exactly, they lie when they said the recoil will be learnable and predictable. It's not, and that's the biggest problem that I have with the game in general, is that the recoil patterns are not learnable. The best thing you could do is kind of jiggle it and move left and right whenever you're handling the recoil of a gun. Let me see. And this is why everyone, like, even when you use a Suomi or a different gun, sometimes it'll kick. I think most of the time, it kicks left, or it kicks right, excuse me. So you have to hug left. So whenever you shoot this, let me pull out. But every time it does it, it's a little bit different. It's just a tad different in variances. And sometimes they're... Okay, that one really, really hugged right. And then if we do it again, there was no hug there. So if you're already hugging left at the start of the recoil and you keep doing it, your aim is wrong. It's not correct anymore. So if you're trying to handle the recoil of this and you're hugging left, You could either get really lucky with the RNG, or you can get unlucky. But the people who are shooting at this range, this is Operation Metro. This is Operation Underground. This is Merida. But if you put somebody with a small hitbox and you even push it, because remember Battlefield said that all these engagements are based on everyone kills each other below 50 meters. Well, the reason why everyone kills each other below 50 meters is because anything... Okay, I'm about to reach... let me reach 50 meters somewhere. They said all the kill encounters are below 50 meters, right? The reason why is because once you approach this level right here, let's say this is a head right here, you can't control that. You can to a certain degree, and you have to get lucky with the RNG of the recoil of the gun and what you're trying to shoot. I can get lucky sometimes, and it's still kicked off, you know? And let's say that's somebody's head and they were crouched like this, and you're trying to hit them just in the head, right? And you're hooking right with it. But even the variances, and this is just 50 meters, and once you push out a Hamada, Panzerstorm, any large map, and the reaction would be, well, Dazs, this gun is designed only for non-long range engagements. Okay, I got you. But if it takes, I think it believes it takes 6 to 7 bullets to kill somebody at this range, that's the long range in the eyes of Dazs. Exactly. But this shouldn't be long range. Because if you're telling me this is long range, and this takes 7 bullets, keep in mind that if you're around 50 meters, this takes about 6 to 7 shots. Maybe 5 if you headshot, maybe 3. But if you're shooting them at this range and you're trying to land, I've already missed the shots. You see the problem there? I've already missed. I landed the first shot, but I've already missed the 3 other ones, and I had to hug left. And every time the gun shoots, even the smaller variances of it hugging a little further right, a little further too far right, like if you saw the different patterns, it changes a bit. It changes to where one line was a little bit further right, one was far right, one was a little closer, one of them didn't have any recoil. But the problem is that if I'm anticipating just the average, the mean, it means that my shot is going to go too far to the left or too far to the right, and I can't correct that. You can't. You're guessing. You are guessing at that engagement of how you're going to win. And if it takes 6 shots and you're fighting somebody who's using a DMR, who's using an SLR, or using a sniper, you're going to lose. You're not going to win that engagement whatsoever. There's no possible way. If I sit here for this long trying to hit you, and I landed maybe 2 or 3 shots, which is almost dead and almost a headshot at that engagement range, then that's a problem. So we don't know how hard or easy it is to kill people with the damage changes. That's going to change the whole meta. Okay, this is mostly it kicks to the right. Let me look at it again. Now it's going left. You see there's a left and then a right and then left. So that's not what we saw on the wall. I was getting good RNG whenever I started the stream and what I was seeing and what versus what's actually happening. So if I go to the wall here and I shoot, the start, we saw the bullet was going up and then going to the right. If I shoot again, it's kicking left now. This is RNG. And this is the problem that we have in Battlefield right now, where tons of people are camping, right? Tons and tons of people are camping. They camp, but look at the recoil. The recoil is a straight line. The recoil is a straight line. This is why people camp, and this is why they use these guns. When the recoil, it does kick up to the right and does different things. It's a bit random. It's a bit random whenever you stand up, but this is why people go prone. When people, and casual players don't know why things aren't working. So what they do is they say, well, what does work? Well, this works, so I can land my shots. If I'm not prone, then I can't physically land my shots. It's not possible. I'm going to lose. So this is why they revert to this. And so the game, what does the game tell us? We have 4 classes. We have the assault class that's supposed to be going in and fighting, right? You're supposed to be able to kill people with mid-range and close range. You can't kill anybody at mid-range. Mid-range I consider maybe 50 to 75 meters. In this game, apparently mid-range is maybe 30 to 50. I'm not really quite sure. But then if you're fighting mid-range, and keep in mind with the assault class, you might as well use the Gewehr 153 because the shots that it takes to land this is only 2 headshots in the game. I know you say you're afraid to play, but I will tell you the guns you have to use just to win. So if you land 2 shots of this at close range, I believe it does like 35 to headshots multiplier, boom, you killed them. But if you're trying to use the Gewehr, the Sturmgewehr 1.5, and you have to land 3 or 4 headshots, that is a problem, right? That's a huge problem. Inspect any good player in Battlefield, any good player with a lot of headshots, a lot of kills, they'll be using guns such as the following. You'll see them using the Gewehr 1.5 because of the single shot. You will see them using bolt actions. You will see them using the Gewehr 43. Anything where they can control the pacing of their shots. The reason why you use these type of guns is because you're trying to handle the recoil. And plus at this range, it still is a 2 to 3 shot kill range compared to using the Sturmgewehr, which is the first gun, which is what they teach Battlefield players to utilize. And you zoom in, you shoot, and this is much more difficult to control. It's a real pain because it's random. It's random. And even for a skilled player, somebody who's practiced their aim for hundreds of hours will find this to be difficult. And if my spray is going left and right and I'm making mistakes going left, I'm still missing my shots, even at that range. If that was supposed to be a headshot right there, I missed. I still missed my shots. That's still a problem. So the person who run up and did body shots, whenever you're encouraged to do headshots, just ran up and just kind of like, oh, my aim is kind of bad, I don't know, and just kills you. It doesn't matter because they still won the fight. But whenever you start looking at the big maps and what they're pushing, what are all the big maps they just posted? They just posted the Pacific Theater, which I think is great. I think it's really immersive. I do think that there's some positive aspects to it. But you get Iwo Jima, you get Pacific Islands, and you're going to have Wake Island, you have Al Sandan, you have Panzerstorm, and then you look at the other maps that are close range, like Operation Metro, and that's why probably so many players liked it, is because there was a lot of, like, predict. It just felt like there was a lot more consistency with the game. But then all of a sudden, and this is why the newer guns I feel like are leaning towards the bigger maps, that if you design guns or on maps that don't really lend themselves, you're saying use these guns in these maps, use these guns in these maps, you've now effectively said that there's only there's no variety. And isn't that the problem with how people feel about Battlefield, is that there's a lack of variety in guns? I feel the solution to this problem, again, you can make recoil patterns that are much more difficult but a lot more consistent, and maybe they kick super far left, super far right, but they're learnable and they can win in more engagements, and maybe they do take more body shots, more headshots. But I feel like players who are casual and who are pro will be able to learn more about how to get better in Battlefield 5, because all the mechanics in Battlefield 5 do not lend themselves to a new person hopping in and being able to figure out the game and want to stay. It's not that better players are just dumpstering on you. That is a part of the equation, but you can't ignore the rest of the part of the equation of what the game tells you should do versus what the game is not telling you to do. I want new players to understand why they feel like they're not succeeding, and I want pro players to understand why it feels like they're not getting the support that they need. Ideally, Battlefield is trying to balance so then a new player can come in and feel like they're comfortable with what they're looking at, but what they're doing is actually hurting casual players. They're hurting them so much, and this is why casual players don't stick around in this game. Because all the guns later are gated, like the Jungle Carbine is gated by rewards. I had Kotrin come in, and he couldn't even get the Jungle Carbine until later, which is one of the best guns in the game. The ZK is way later, so you have to expect a player to play maybe 15 hours, if they're not very good, maybe 20, before they can get to a decent gun and understand, oh, the recoil, that's kind of how it works. And then the same thing as you unlock the DMRs of the assault class and you're presented with the first assault gun, you just get absolutely trashed on and you don't understand why. And you don't really know what you're doing wrong. You just kind of feel like a bad player. And that's not really fair to anybody, really.